Let me see.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to my live. I have Jim Coast joining me. And Jim, I'm waiting for you to come on.
Okay, I'm signing on now, Marisa.
All right.
Are we doing this on phone? Because I have my computer hooked up. I'm trying to sign on through computer.
Yeah, sign on through your computer.
Yeah.
Here we go. You guys know that I am not like the most technologically savvy person in the whole world. So, I kind of prefer everything organic, and this is like, of course, a little challenging. Hey, Jim, how you doing? Are you signing on?
I'm working on it, Marisa. I think I have it. Yeah, okay. Let's see.
Okay.
Okay, let's see. Okay, let's see.
All right, let's go.
All right,
waiting for Jim.
Okay, update. Okay.
How's everybody doing?
Let's see if this is invalid. Why is it telling me invalid?
Oh my God.
I just signed up. I just signed in.
Okay.
Got it. Let me just make sure. Okay, looks like it's okay.
I'm on Restream now, waiting for Jim.
Okay, join stream. Hold on.
Okay, let's go.
Okay, it's on the screen. Ready to join? Okay, hang on.
You should be popping in.
Yeah. Okay, hold on. Let me see.
We're going to talk about natural law, and Jim's going to tell us exactly what that is. How are you doing, Jim?
Looks like I am in. Can you join stream? I have the window on my computer. Do you see me?
No.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay, hold on. Let me do this.
Okay.
Hold on. Let me see. Join stream. There we go.
Okay, got you.
Awesome.
Okay. Hey,
right.
Jim.
Hey, Marisa.
All right, now let's do the double screen here.
Yep.
Okay. Oh, no. There we are.
Yeah.
Hey, Jim. How you doing?
Hey, Marisa. I'm good. I think what I'm going to do, hang up the phone.
Yeah, hang up your phone. Okay.
There we go.
There.
Now
okay, now can we hear you?
Test 1, 2. How about, can you hear me?
Yeah. All right.
Okay.
Awesome.
You need me to come up in volume a little more? Am I good?
I think you might be good.
Okay.
Anybody here? How's Jim's volume, you guys?
Yeah, let me know because I'm not getting the feed.
Give me a thumbs up, somebody. Anybody? Can you hear us?
Test 1, 2. Test 1, 2. Testing.
Okay.
1, 2.
That's all right. Just asking if anybody has any comments. Can we hear Jim?
Yeah.
I guess we can. So
I guess we can. Let me just crank my volume a little bit. Give me 1 second.
Okay. All right.
All right. There we go. Tell me well, I'll just go with that, and we'll just have to because I can hear you great. I just can't hear my own monitor through this.
Okay, I can hear you and you sound great. Can you center yourself a little bit more on the screen?
How's that? Better?
A little bit more centered, maybe?
Okay. Let's see.
Can you shift your computer so you're more?
Well, let me do this. How's that? Better?
A little better. A little more?
Yeah, let me move this here. I'm moving the computer here.
Thanks, Susan, for letting us know you can hear us.
Okay.
Awesome. All right, so we're going to be talking about, so first of all, Jim, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself? I know you studied natural law with Mark Passio, right?
Well, I took the how to become the true media course in 2020, the first one.
Mm-hmm.
And I started doing some of my own podcast. I had been turned on to Mark's work for about 4 years before that.
Mhm.
Also had, with people like Michael Tessarion, um, Jordan Maxwell, the usual heavy hitters.
Mhm.
Those are the guys. I'd say probably Mark, Jordan, uh, Michael Tessarion, David
Mhm.
Icke,
Mhm.
were the four biggest. Mark Devlin,
Mhm.
those guys were really the four biggest influences for me.
Mhm.
And yeah, I just started doing some uh, guest appearances on a couple of podcasts. People like Chris Jansen, Corey Angelot, Fred Gingras from the Libercast, and
Mhm.
um, I've been doing some of my own podcasting and took a break the past couple 3 months, and I'm gonna get started again. I just have to figure out the appropriate form, and maybe we could have this be a regular thing if everything works out well.
Okay, that'd be cool. I mean, I love talking about current events with you and how they relate to natural law and how they relate to humanity and how, we can learn to see through the inversion and see the truer meaning and how we can, stay on the path of sovereignty. So that's pretty much the goal here, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, I would say so. I'd say also we should
Mm-hmm.
get some uh, terms in order.
Mm-hmm.
Just first of all, the idea of natural laws.
Yeah, give us a definition of natural law. So,
Well,
what exactly is natural law?
the best way that I could put it is if the physical world operates under certain immutable conditions, and humanity also operates human behavior and being in harmony with those laws of nature also operates within certain immutable conditions as well. It's really like following a recipe, or if I'm also a professional musician, so studying and discipline. It's
Mm-hmm.
also, you have a certain framework that you operate under, a certain discipline, a certain vocabulary, certain logic to learning, the vocabulary that you're going to use to communicate with the outside world, with the thoughts
Jim?
outside of your own head.
Okay, so but what does that mean exactly? Like, is there like a description that is like, I heard, what is it? Do no harm, take no shit, right?
Yeah,
That's
that's
kind
well, that's a
that's
very
a,
that's a succinct way of putting it.
uh-huh.
More or less, the immutable conditions of natural law are such that it's operating really within the framework of, really, essentially, it's the masculine principle, which the feminine principle, which is do no harm.
Mm-hmm.
That's operating towards the way that we act is lined up with, have any action that does not do that. It can best be defined in what's called an apophatic manner, which means
Mm-hmm.
you can define what it is by what it is not. So,
Mm-hmm.
which means essentially any action that does not cause harm to another sentient being is a right. And that's do no harm. You don't engage in coercion or violence or duress, or anything. Basically, Mark Passio says that comes down to two words: don't steal.
Mm-hmm.
Murder is the stealing of of a life of a sentient being. You don't have a right to take any life, but in the action of self-defense. If somebody encroaches upon your right to exist,
Mm-hmm.
then you have the right to defend yourself, up
Right.
to and including physical death.
Mm-hmm.
So that's the only way that death is permissible. an action of imposing death upon another being.
Okay. So, Jim, but how does the concept of do no harm, take no shit, or natural law, how does that relate to what's going on now, like what's happening in the world at this point in time? Because we're hearing all these different crazy stories at the moment. Like, okay, like the story of ivermectin, that's now it's like a toxic infertility drug.
Right.
Right?
I've just heard this myself. Frankly, I haven't really done enough research into that
Mm-hmm.
to speak authoritatively on whether the findings of Mike Yeadon are true or are they not true.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's very plausible that what he's saying is true, and Amanda Vollmer also said the same thing. But
Right.
I mean, it takes really it's not plain and simple. It's not a simple answer, Marisa, because essentially Mark Passio spent almost 17 years
Mm-hmm.
detailing all this information with thousands of hours of content, including an 8-hour seminar on natural law, and
Right.
to explain it in a systems level knowledge. And we have to really go back to the beginning.
Mm-hmm.
Essentially, the beginning is essentially the idea that we don't. It's simple enough to say that we don't act in a way that causes harm to another sentient being. But then, how is that manifested in practice?
Mm-hmm.
That's really that could take 30 podcasts to really say, because it's really holding to a straight logical line. And that line really involves understanding the trivium
Mm-hmm.
method of reasoning, that we have to look at it like, does an action cause harm to another sentient being? First of all, are you allowing somebody to exist within, it's basically the right to be left alone. Are you
Okay, so because that's the thing, like the way I described this show today was there are two types of people in the world, right?
right?
Those who want to be left alone and those who won't leave the
Those
people
other
who want to
people
be
alone.
left alone
Exactly.
alone. Right.
Exactly.
So
Exactly correct.
so
Yes.
what does that mean? And so
Okay,
how does that relate to what we're saying?
that mean in practice,
Mm-hmm.
that essentially means that you have to allow y- uh, well, it like, for example, um to allow somebody to exist in a way that you don't harm them in the course of their life. But also, I mean, it could be everything from allowing freedom of movement,
Mm-hmm.
freedom of, you know freedom to choose a method of care for their physical body.
Mm-hmm.
All these different things, a method of, inter all these things, essentially, they if you if you allow the other person the freedom to make choices for themselves in their physical world, but the choices that the other person makes in turn have to not cause any duress, coercion, any kind of limit to your freedom to exist as a sentient being. You know, and
So
and
okay.
really it comes down to, you know, there's the don't steal idea. Uh,
Right.
it's as long as you're not engaging in coercion of another person. The
Mm-hmm.
events of the last 4 years are a plain example of coercion and duress.
Okay, so
What's
basically, okay,
happening to the world.
right. So basically, we're talking about how some people resisted right?
Right.
And some people, because we're on YouTube and we're going to have to speak in code a little bit,
Sure.
right? So some
Okay.
people, right, resisted, and some people
complied. Right.
complied. So
Sure.
basically, the people who resisted, a lot of people were very angry at them, right?
Right.
There was
But
all that pressure.
yes.
So,
Okay, but here's the thing about that. The
mhm,
people who resisted these dictates were essentially saying that your dictates are imposing coercion and duress upon my right to exist and my right to bodily sovereignty.
mhm,
So therefore, but the other people, the people who complied, countered by saying, using the word safety. But
mhm,
but here's the thing: does what they considered to be safety
mhm,
was essentially a misnomer. It
mhm,
was and again, I'm trying to speak in a way
mhm,
that doesn't say certain things.
mhm,
Um, okay, basically, if you they were operating under false axiomatic principles.
mhm.
They by saying, for example, let's just say terrain theory versus germ theory.
Okay,
The
so what's the difference between, because some people don't know, what's the difference between terrain theory and germ theory?
the simplest way I could put it is
Mhm,
essentially it's like to keep a fish healthy, do you clean the tank, or do you put something into the already existing tank? You
okay.
know, like, in other words, you have to have the environment that the person exists in predicates whether somebody is their body is a state of homeostasis and disease free. Disease is
Mhm,
essentially the state of non-homeostasis in the body.
mhm,
And those conditions of non-homeostasis are not imposed upon the body in a way that the people who were asking for compliance were it was not in the way that they were saying. So therefore, they were operating under a mistaken assumption, but their mistaken assumption was also operating in a way to to impose coercion, duress, and the non-freedom upon the other person.
So, Jim, let me ask you something. So, terrain theory, right, would
Yes.
basically mean like we're hearing all these reports of like 5G, right?
Yes.
We're hearing chemtrails like the metals in the sky,
Right.
right? We're hearing about the metals in like chocolate. Like,
Yeah.
you know, we're hearing, about we all know about the pesticides and like the
Sure.
bioengineered food. Now you go to Whole Foods and it's like, a fraction of the food. It's like half foods. It's like a
Right.
quarter foods. It's like
Yeah.
there's nothing whole about Whole Foods, right?
Exactly.
So
Exactly.
so that would be an example. All these things would be like the water,
Yeah.
the fluoridated water. Like all these things would be an example of terrain theory, correct?
Well, they would be the external imposition of toxins upon the body is
Mm-hmm.
what creates non-homeostasis. To
Okay.
have the body in homeostasis
Mm-hmm.
is essentially the detoxification of the body. What most people call dis-ease is an expression of the body trying to detoxify itself.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Wow. All right. So
So
this is very
essentially,
Louise Hay also,
yeah, exactly. She was on the
Mm-hmm.
right track in a lot of ways. And
Mm-hmm.
that's essentially what we're talking about, Marisa, is we're talking about the ability of your your body to heal, the body can heal itself and be in that state of homeostasis if you purge the body of toxins.
Well, you know what, Jim? Let's talk about toxins right now.
Sure.
Okay. So it's interesting that we went from natural law, right? Do
Right.
no harm, right? Do not steal, right? And now
Right.
we're talking about toxins, which basically can steal your health, right?
Exactly.
Okay, so it's interesting because, like the toxins now, like we have to, I mean, it's really like if you want to stay healthy, you have to detox your life.
Yes, and essentially you have to detox at a very core level
Mm-hmm.
because we're being assaulted from all sides, you know?
Mm-hmm.
We're being assaulted in the, in the skies, in the water, in the
Uh-huh.
food supply,
Mm-hmm.
and all these different areas that are, imposing these conditions of non-homeostasis and
Mm-hmm.
toxicity on the physical body.
So let's talk about how we can, because I think this is like really an interesting topic,
Sure.
detoxing at the core level.
Yep.
So what do we do? Like detoxing at the core level emotionally, right?
Right.
So
Well,
what?
that's essentially if we think about the fact that in our families of origin, we've had we've been this is another aspect that people here's another axiomatic uh here's another axiom that people operate under that is
Mm-hmm.
completely incorrect. People say human beings good or are they bad? Human beings are neither. Human beings are programmable. So in other words, whatever is in it, whatever is whatever our environment is from the time we've come out of the womb in the first 7 years of our life,
Mm-hmm.
that's where we basically exist in the state. We're closer to source at
Mm-hmm.
the beginning of our life to the age of 7. We're in Jay Parker calls it a hypnagogic state. We're sort of half in and half out, which is why so many people feel, oh, we love children, we love animals because they're closer to source. They're
Because they just came from source and they're like, they
exactly
don't have all these preconceived notions. They haven't been indoctrinated. I mean, children are very playful. I just had this conversation yesterday with Carrie Cassidy where we were talking about how children are, they have imaginations and they're very free. And adults, like everything sort of we get bombarded by paying bills, you know, going to work and making sure the people around us are okay. I mean, there's like all these different stressors, and then dealing with like the government and dealing with like the media and dealing with like
right.
your health and all this other stuff where children are they just play and so there's like,
Because yeah, they're more in touch. They haven't been
mm-hmm,
programmed.
mm-hmm,
The programming hasn't taken root with them yet. They're
mm-hmm,
still in it
mm-hmm,
because, from the indoctrination system,
mm-hmm,
the education system, the family of origin,
mm-hmm,
their peers, the media,
mm-hmm.
and now the kids today with having these devices, kids having iPhones, before the age
Yeah.
of 7, and I've seen parents give their kids iPads, it's, in my teaching, it's crazy, you know.
Mm-hmm,
But anyway, these things all are like because children are closer to that source and the programming hasn't taken root in them fully,
mm-hmm,
they're open, they're receptors, they're sponges to all this external stimuli.
mm-hmm,
So what happens is they all the stuff they just drink it in, and that includes the symbols and all the children's channels, which is why the organizations like Disney and Nickelodeon, all the symbology that happens at such a core level in these occultic organizations, you know, really takes root into children. Everything from with girls, there's princess programming, and there's all these different aspects of the media that go into the pre 7 and older consciousness, and it just takes root there, and that shapes their consciousness. So,
That's true, Jim, because you know what? When you think about it too, like Disney, I
yeah.
mean, there's so much occulted stuff there.
Oh,
But
yeah.
there's also the fact that, like there's Bambi and there's Cinderella and there's Snow White. Like none of them had a mother.
Yeah.
Like they didn't have families. And that's
Yep.
kind of like when you think about it and you think about what's going on with children right now, how, they want to take the state wants to own the children and take it
Sure.
away from
Yep.
the parents, and they want to
Right.
destroy the family unit.
Right.
And makes me think about how, the Beatles were like the world's biggest psyop to destroy the family. I mean,
Yeah.
they were engineered by Tavistock. So
Right.
there's that. I mean, it's
Sure.
so interesting how like all these different things that we grew up with that we loved, like the magic. Disney was the Magic Kingdom, and then you find
Yeah.
out all the stuff about Walt Disney, how he's
Yeah.
a 33-degree Freemason, and how
Right.
Disney always kills the mother. They always
Yep.
kill the mother. Always,
Bambi.
always.
Sure.
Bambi.
Yep.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So and then you think about, how Tavistock, or how the Beatles, like that was all about shredding the family. And
Yeah.
it's interesting how like when you see things, you can't kind of unsee them. So,
Right.
you
Exactly.
know,
But
yeah.
remember, Marisa, also all these operations were incremental.
Mm-hmm.
You
Yeah.
know, what happened with Disney,
Mm-hmm.
all these things. I remember I saw Fantasia as a movie theater as a kid. I loved all those Disney movies. I loved Fantasia being a budding musician, all this stuff. But all of the, everything like, there's a very famous piece in the Fantasia by the French composer Paul Dukas called The Sorcerer's Apprentice.
Right.
You look at that story, it was brilliantly told, and the animation is still breathtaking. But, they're basically, I mean, how occultic can you get, with this?
The red robes.
It was right out there. It was right out there in plain sight, which is what all this stuff was. They
Mm-hmm.
were just more subtle about it back in those days than they are now. Now they're just bludgeoning people over the head with it, you
Mm-hmm.
know? And part of this, with, let's say, getting to the whole if we're going to talk about infiltration of pop culture,
Mm-hmm.
yes, Disney, Disney was responsible for it. I mean, what was the big lie about Disney? Family friendly, you know.
Right. And they
All
shredded the family.
Yep, and the whole thing, it was to shred the family,
Right.
and the Beatles did it. Well,
Mm-hmm.
really, it actually started with Elvis, because Elvis took black music, and he was a white boy playing black music, and he brought it to a larger audience and brought something that was basically the folk music of a people and brought it into the pop realm, which was all Colonel Tom Parker,
Mm-hmm.
because when Elvis started out, a lot of kids growing up in the South, a lot of white kids in the South, they're very close, to, they all the kids listened to and were influenced by, the black music around, and they were closer in proximity to that culture,
Mm-hmm.
and they absorbed it the same, you know, maybe not as deeply because it wasn't a part of their DNA like it was with black people, but it was
Mm-hmm.
still absorbed very deeply, and you had practitioners who were very skilled at it, you know.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Um, all the Southern rock groups, the Allman Brothers and Leonard Skinner, all those groups were from the South. Stevie Ray Vaughan, all these people, and they played with a skill and dexterity that gained the respect of a lot of black musicians. But at the same time, in regards to Elvis, what it was this was to break Elvis was a way to break that raw element of black rhythm and blues to a larger audience and to the word teenager wasn't
Mhm.
even really coined till the 50s. Before Elvis, sure, you had Frank Sinatra and you had the Jazz Age, you had the Bobby Soxers, you had all those groups, but it didn't split the family. Elvis was really the first example of generations warring against each other in terms of, you know, their choices culturally, you
Oh,
know.
that's interesting. I see what you're saying now because it's like if you didn't like Elvis, you were like not cool. You're not hip,
But
right?
not
And
but
like
yeah, but not only that, but it was also not just between the kids, it was also
the kids and the
between the
parents.
kid. Exactly. Yep.
Right. So the parents didn't vibe with Elvis
Yeah.
because
They saw it
it's
as the
very
devil.
sexual, let's be
They saw
honest.
they saw it, yeah, they saw it as devil's music or,
Right.
in more racist undertonings,
Mhm.
that, you know, they'd say jungle music or much less,
Mhm.
you know, kind terms than that,
Mhm.
you know,
Mhm.
in terms of the music. So but because Elvis aped those styles so well, and because music hits you at a very subconscious level, also music, any kind of folk music or music with, a heavy beat or, a very defined beat, is also hit you at lower chakras like your solar plexus, your second chakra, your root chakra. And so these kids were being opened up psychically by this music, through the chakras in ways that they had no idea that were happening. They just liked the music and they liked to be free and they liked to dance, but it was hitting them on a different level. And this was all by design. And I'm not saying that
Mhm.
the music that didn't break through to the white audience, except if you were a music head, you
Right.
the people like, all the R&B people like Louis Jordan, Jay McShann, all the artists, Buddy Guy, Bo Diddley,
Mhm.
the R&B of that time that was more stayed within the black community. That still
Mhm.
had the same power and primacy, but they and the kids in the black community did not, unless your parents were unless you were from a church family, parents who were really church going would say, oh, that's the blues was the devil's music or R&B was the devil's music, but the beat in R&B was the same beat that was in a lot of gospel. They were just singing, instead of "Oh baby baby" in R&B, they're singing "Lord, save me" in gospel,
That's interesting, Jim, because and then you take it okay, them going back to like the Beatles, right?
Sure.
And like Tavistock
Right.
and how they were, engineered to basically break up the family. And then there's like the Rolling Stones
Right.
and with the satanic messaging, right?
But
Which
both
we all,
but both of them
yeah,
had both of them had satanic
I
messaging.
know. But here's the thing,
It's just
though.
about but the Stones were more overt about it
They
because
were more overt. But the thing is, I never really believed it until I read about Preston Nichols, right?
right,
Who was overlaying the satanic messaging in the music in
right,
Montauk. So
right.
he actually did do that. And that
Yeah,
is actually true. And then you find out about how when George Lucas was filming Star Wars,
right.
you know about this? There were sorcerers who were chanting satanic messaging in the reels. They
No.
were magicians, like black
Yeah,
magicians,
yeah,
right?
I didn't know that,
And
but I'm not surprised.
so,
This
well, but so what I'm saying is, it's like okay, so we hear like Star Wars had sorcerers chanting in the film reels while he was filming.
uh,
Okay,
right,
you have like the overlay of the satanic messaging and the music, like the Rolling Stones, which was done by Preston Nichols, who, by the way, was one of the most evil people who ever existed on the planet, right?
Right.
What he did to the children at Montauk,
Yeah.
I mean, that's a whole other topic.
Yes.
At Camp Hero. So,
yeah.
But then, like, so, when we hear about all this stuff going on in music, like our parents weren't wrong, and like, so, and then like,
no, they weren't wrong. But again, part of this is, I can just say from the Star Wars, this is the first I've heard about the Star Wars, although again, I'm not surprised. But the thing is, Lucas also took elements from the mythology of Joseph Campbell, and
the hero's journey.
And he took some really deep archetypal concepts and overlaid them into the movies. Now, another thing that he did was he showed very clearly the light and the dark between, especially in the not only the first the first 3 Star Wars films that we knew, that was 77 through 80 something, right? Those first ones, but those were actually numbers 4, 5, and 6 in the trilogy. When they did the prequels later in the 90s, we got to see about the origin of how Anakin Skywalker became Darth Vader. But what we found out through the ascension of Darth Vader, how the Sith Lords how they ascended to the throne, they had to assassinate the previous Sith Lord, which goes in line with the satanic concept of throwing people under the bus. And we can look at everybody from Biden to the recently deceased Susan Wojcicki,
well, the thing, right? I mean, the thing is, it's like that whole coup was. I just can't believe that. People aren't screaming because people didn't really vote. So, but
there's that. But again, to look at that another way, if we look at the fact that government, like Mark Twain said, if voting really did anything, it would be they wouldn't let us do it.
Right.
And not only that, in the words of Mark Passio, government is slavery. Always has been, always will be.
So how do the people stay? Okay, so here's the thing.
So, here's what I was gonna say, just to put a pin, wrap that thought up, is basically the idea that, think about it this way. In a way, it's karmic retribution for Biden, because if we consider what happened in 2020, and then he gets his comeuppance, you see. So there's that. But also the fact is, what's happening now with what we're seeing on display in Chicago now, we're essentially seeing laid out naked in the open. We're seeing what government really is and what voting really is. That government, we're seeing, because here you've got a guy up on stage who had a COVID, had a snitch line, and behind him there are all these stickers that say freedom.
Okay, yeah. So that is again the hypocrisy, right?
Yeah.
Because the freedom signs are like killing me, because.
But see, here's the thing about that, Marisa.
There's nothing.
No, there's nothing free about it.
Right.
Because they're considering only one aspect of freedom. The right of a woman to abort a pregnancy is freedom, but nothing else is.
Well, that's the thing, though, Jim. I mean, and then there's the abortion truck and the vasectomy truck out there. So
sure, right.
Again, that's sort of that fits in with the whole Deagle thing and
Well,
ivermectin
it's
as a toxic
the
fertility drug.
depopulation. Exactly.
Yeah, it's the
Yeah.
depop.
Well, but remember,
Mm-hmm.
here's the other thing about all of that is we have to remember that Planned Parenthood started as a eugenics program against the Black community.
Margaret Sanger. Thanks, Ant Cakes, for shining. We just got a comment, shining light on the dark. Thank you. Yeah. Well,
And
that's true.
yeah, so
Mhm.
let's not lose sight of that. I mean,
Mhm.
it's out there for everybody to discover. And
Mhm.
but the thing is that what we're seeing so much mind control in Chicago right now looking at these people. They basically let me backtrack for a minute and say that what they're doing is they're not, because they're so ruled by their fear. They have Orange Man bad at
Mhm.
such a primal level. That's at the reptilian brainstem level with them. They can't use their higher brain functions to think about the fact, well, wait a minute, freedom freedom doesn't only apply to one particular practice. That freedom applies to the ability of an individual to have sovereignty over their own body in every single aspect. Either you're for every aspect or you're for no aspects. It's that simple. Just like with the idea, there's this big um, misdirection about so-called free speech. People, because our so-called education system is full on indoctrination, people haven't been trained in the Trivium method. They haven't been trained how to think logically and pull apart facts for themselves and really take apart an argument. And
So,
they
Jim,
yes.
you use the word like what exactly is the trivium method? Because like I'm not clear about that, and if I'm not
Okay.
clear about it, I'm
Okay.
sure
The
other people
Trivium,
are not.
there's two.
Mm-hmm.
Before the Prussian education system was
Mm-hmm.
established in this country, which
Mm-hmm.
was established by Horace Mann and
Mm-hmm.
um, all these other eugenicists in the 1840s who took a trip to to Bavaria, and they took a trip to see the Prussian educational system because they wanted to have the American people become dutiful slaves and good
Mm-hmm.
cogs in the machinery, because
Mm-hmm.
all these people that there are statues to in all these law schools were essentially eugenicists. Oliver Wendell Holmes and all of these other people, Baruch and all these people, they were all eugenicists. They were all racists. And
Really?
yeah, and the thing about this,
Okay,
well,
I didn't know that.
but
Okay.
what we have to remember is
Mm-hmm.
that okay, that before the Prussian educational system was established in this country,
Mm-hmm.
people were taught. They had McGuffey's readers and the Little Red Schoolhouse and all these different books in school. You were taught the Trivium method in
Mm-hmm.
in the one room schoolhouse. You
Mm-hmm.
were taught grammar, which is the accumulation of knowledge; logic, which is the distillation and the accumulation. Taking that, the sorting of that knowledge and sifting through it and understanding how it works with the information that you're aggregating. And then rhetoric, which is the ability to speak this with clarity and parrhesia to the outside world, to another person.
Okay, so that's the trivium. Those
That's
three.
a trivia. Yeah, it's
Okay.
grammar, logic, rhetoric.
Okay, got
Basically,
it.
basically, it's input, processing, and output.
Okay, that's really okay. That's a really easy way of understanding it. Okay.
Right. So you
Okay.
have the trivium and you have the quadrivium, which is the next highest level of, once you've gone through the trivium, you learn the quadrivium, which is the Pythagorean elements, you learn geometry, and you learn music, and
Mm-hmm.
you learn poetry, and you know, I the fourth one is escaping me right now. But anyway, you learned all of these elements once you learned grammar, logic, and rhetoric. Once you learned how to do that in a convincing manner,
Mm-hmm.
then you were able to ascend, to higher elements of the distillation of knowledge.
Mm-hmm.
And so essentially, what the trivium method is, like, for example, that people can't turn around and say, well, I'm just going to say it. They can't. They can't say, well, geez, all this talk about so-called democracy, which, by the way, we don't live in a democracy. It's a constitutional republic. But
Yeah.
besides that, and why is democracy such a good thing? Because if you have 51% of the people happy, then that means you're going to have 49% of the people pissed off.
Mm-hmm.
So how is that, how is that an ideal system?
Mm-hmm.
But I'm not saying that it doesn't have its place in an integrative way. But my point is, it's not the be all and end all. And yet
Mm-hmm.
here are these people talking about democracy,
Mm-hmm.
but yet they've installed somebody as their party's nominee who didn't get a single vote.
All right. I mean, like, that to me is the biggest threat to democracy. She hasn't gotten one vote. Like
Right.
that. Like that is okay.
Well,
Yeah.
yeah. Well,
But the thing,
it's
yeah.
blatantly, it's bone crushingly obvious.
Mm-hmm.
See, here's the thing, Marisa. If we just did what I just did in dissecting this,
Mm-hmm.
understanding that if you use a logical progression, you look at something and say, okay, people are saying this. Does
Mm-hmm.
what they're saying, does this buzzword actually align with the definition of that particular word?
Okay.
And not only does it what are the definitions of that word, and how have the definitions altered over
Mm-hmm.
the years?
Mm-hmm.
And you have to unpack that even further. So therefore, but that's a very simple thing. It's just like taking one idea, saying, how does this measure up with the implementation of that one idea? Is it, does it align? Is it what it says it is? Is the practice, is the ability to use this word justified in the context that they're using it, or are they misusing it? And the thing is, not only are they misusing it, are they intentionally misusing it? Are they using it in a way to use some kind of a cast, some kind of a, okay, here's the word. Yeah,
Spell. Right.
exactly.
Because basically they just inverted what the word democracy really means.
Exactly. And not
Just
only
like everything, like just like holding up signs that say free or freedom.
right, exactly.
So,
Or my body, my choice, when
mm-hmm.
if you were talking about a certain medical procedure, they would
Mm-hmm.
jump down your
Thanks.
throat about that. You
Right.
whereas, like I said, it's the idea of freedom of speech.
Hi,
You know,
Cozy.
yeah,
Yeah, that
it-
was funny.
he's been behind the computer
Well,
all
we were talking about, all right, we were talking about my body, my choice, pussy. Well, anyway,
right,
sorry.
right.
No, but yeah, so.
But here's the thing about that. Think
Mm-hmm.
about this.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, um, if we're talking about the ability, again, my body, my choice, it goes to the idea of don't steal,
Mm-hmm.
don't, if your censorship is stealing the free access of information from another sentient being so that they are unable to make a completely holistic and informed decision about the topic of which the censorship is involved with.
So that's interesting, Jim. Okay. I see how you work that into the concept of natural law. Censorship, by withholding information, you're stealing the information from the people. That way, they
Precisely.
have not made a fully educated decision about whether to do a procedure or not, or whether
Right.
to do.
Or not only a procedure, but it could
Mhm.
be anything about, it could be
Eating a
everything.
food,
Eating a food, you
right?
know,
Drinking some water,
right.
using
Or
a toothpaste.
right. Or
Mhm.
using any kind of any kind of
Mhm.
substance to put into their body. Or it
Mhm.
goes further than putting substances into your body, the idea of, you know, and how did the events of elections actually occur? And
Mhm.
do we have the whole story around that? And again, you know, we have to remember that and I'm just asking question. I'm just raising the idea of
Mhm.
how can you make how can you make an informed decision about something if you don't have the full, if you don't have not only the full or a full picture, you don't have a 360-degree, or you don't have a larger perspective. Like, for example, let's take the interview that Tucker Carlson did with Putin.
Mhm.
Now, everybody, was up in arms about that, and they wanted to censor that interview and not have people listen to it. But why in the world would you want to have why would you want to censor the statements of a leader who is governing over the largest landmass on the continent?
It's like, why would you want to censor the information of doctors who are only trying to put information out there for the betterment of the people or for the optimal health of the people? I
Yeah,
mean, it's like, again, it's like a thief. Withholding the knowledge is a thievery of the knowledge.
absolutely. It is
Mhm.
absolutely a thievery of that. The other
Mhm.
aspect of that, Marisa, is that
Mhm.
let's look at it this way.
Mhm.
Everybody says, they're calling all this, the word that I loathe more than anything, misinformation. No, it's just information. It's not misinformation because what let's look at it this way.
Mhm.
This whole idea of censorship is also promulgating learned helplessness upon the population and infantilism, because what's happening is that it's the idea. People say, well, you shouldn't be allowed to do this because that information could be dangerous. How can information be dangerous if you, because the whole concept of information in and of itself is not dangerous. It's how you use that said information. That's what can be. And if you don't have the discernment to
Mhm.
know how to put the pieces together to use that information in a way that's beneficial to yourself or others. Just having information in and of itself is neutral.
Mhm. It's just like, you know, the internet. Well, actually, no, the internet really isn't neutral because let's face it, it was created by DARPA to
Right.
mental
But
dead people. So never mind, bad example.
no,
But
no, no. The internet in itself
mhm.
might have been initially deployed in that way, but
Mhm.
what it's come to symbolize until very recently, it's
Mhm.
been the ability to have that storehouse of
Mhm.
information, limitless storehouse of information. That
Right, and it's right. So it's what you do with the information. It's just like,
exactly.
yeah.
It's exactly what you do. Just like the
Mhm.
same thing is, one thing that I have to say is
Mhm.
I'm I have a bone to pick with most of the so-called truth community, because there's so many people that they're almost like fundamentalist in the way that they take one corner of something, whether it's Freemasonry, whether it's occulted information, whether it's any kind of information, the information in and of itself is neither good nor bad. It's just information. The information, Freemasonry in and of itself is neither its energy that's being deployed. It can be deployed in either a way, you know, it can either be used towards good purposes or evil
So
purposes.
basically, because like, I mean, this is a whole other topic.
Yes.
I'm in, Ann Cake says I'm in frequency healing, very powerful, but people don't believe. True. So basically, the Freemasonry, didn't that come from the mystery schools, which actually, that was occulted knowledge, which it depends on how you apply it. But Freemasonry as a whole, I mean,
it's a whole nother subject, but
that's a whole other subject. And
but
I
one thing that I have to say about that is that the initial, when Freemasonry itself was established, it was just meant to be a way for people to agree. It's like a private club in essence. It was in the same way. It was an organization that was meant to distill certain hidden information. It essentially came through the Knights Templar as well. But the thing is, it was a way to practice information in and among like-minded people to gain more knowledge of not only it was really supposed to be the bridge between the natural world, the way that man observed the natural world, and spirituality. It was bringing in principles of geometry and Pythagorean principles. The whole idea, what people forget, the compass, there's so many elements about the Freemasonic compass and the free all these symbols that people who don't know are misconstruing what these symbols actually mean. Like the dark, basically the capstone is meant, basically what it's meant is to build, it's to build a tower that, that's essentially for illumination and to spread knowledge throughout the world. But the dark elements have gotten in a way to the capstone to them means putting a cap on the freedom of humanity, essentially.
Right. So, yeah, I mean, I guess because, I've read quite a bit about the Freemasons and like I know about the SRA and
but
I mean, I know that there's like a lot of knowledge there. I mean, like Manly P. Hall, if you read his work, there's
not only Manly P. Hall, but I'm also going to say I got the Mark Passio's Arc Drive a couple of months ago, and he has Masonic texts in there from the 1840s, original Masonic texts. And there's all kinds of information, just the amount of knowledge that he's aggregated on 2 gigabytes of storage is mind-boggling. It's going to take 10 lifetimes to get through all of it. But the point is that if you read these documents for themselves and you read them objectively, they do not have you see that they're essentially neutral in the sense that if you have the ability, if you have the mindset to use them as a way to gain knowledge and to gain illumination in the way that Manly P. Hall did, that they can be a boon to mankind, but all of this, it's just that the same way that people misunderstand Crowley, they misunderstand, like Thelema is probably one of the most liberating documents. Liber Oz is as great a document as the Declaration of Independence.
All right, but Crowley was such a Satanist, and the children can't even.
But here's the thing about Crowley. What you have to understand, he wasn't always like that. Crowley is kind of like Anakin Skywalker.
Right. Well.
in the sense that what he did was
Mhm.
he started out a lot of the stuff that he said was
Mhm.
he was kind of a tweaker. He liked to tweak all the stuff about the world's most evil man or all this stuff was basically a way to give the middle finger to the British upper class. But the thing is, he didn't have ultimately, Crowley did not have the discernment
Mhm.
to really understand the the power of what he was messing with. And if he would have been more on the straight and narrow and he hadn't given in to his libertine side,
Mhm.
we would have seen an entirely different thing. But the thing is, there's a big difference between.
Jim Crawley had like evil intentions, though.
But see, here's the thing.
I mean,
Not
I can't.
not all of his documents did. Now the thing is, you have to look if you look at everything that he said.
Mhm.
First of all, there's a big difference between
Mhm.
Diary of a Drug Fiend and
Mhm.
Liber Oz. There's
Mhm.
a big difference between the two of those texts. There's
All
also
right. I really didn't want to have this conversation,
yeah,
but okay.
but anyway,
Mhm.
all I'm saying is that
Mhm.
just because somebody has fallen,
Mhm.
and a lot of his texts were used for nefarious purposes does not mean that in different hands they can't mean something entirely different. That's what I'm saying.
All
Just
right. I would never. Okay.
because the
I mean,
here's
I
the
would never even want to have his. I would never even want to read his stuff because
but see
energetically, I know like what he was capable of and what he did. So,
he
I mean, I would
wasn't.
rather not deal with
But
that.
but here's the thing.
I'm not going to defend Crawley, but go
I'm
ahead.
not I'm just saying that
Mm-hmm.
the part of this that you have to understand is that
Mm-hmm.
the all information is
Mm-hmm.
essentially all information is neutral. It's
Mm-hmm.
how it's taken. You know, the only book that I've seen in all the studies that I've done that
Mm-hmm.
I literally had to shut immediately when I'm reading was the Necromonicon. You
Mm-hmm.
know, so but anything else, you know, in terms of seeing it, like I said, I'm just saying that because the whole idea, think of it this way, Marisa.
Yeah.
Think of what people say. Think of what the average, let's say, the average Bible Belt Christian thinks when they hear the word occult. They
Mm-hmm.
think of the devil, right? They
Mm-hmm.
think of kids sacrificing animals in some darkened forest, right?
Mm-hmm.
But the thing is, occult doesn't mean that. Occult simply means
I know it
hidden,
means hidden. Right.
right? But
Right.
so the point is that I'm saying is
Mm-hmm.
that everybody has their limits of what they
Mm-hmm.
can see or not see. And I'm not saying that you should transgress those limits of anything that you yourself don't feel comfortable with. But
Mm-hmm.
what I'm saying is that for the world in general, I'm saying that these documents, it's like the whole thing. If you look at information in the same way that we look at human beings are neither good nor bad within themselves, that they are programmable. It all
Mm-hmm.
depends on their programming. Information in and of itself is neither good nor bad, it's how it's used.
Jim, I disagree with you about depends on people's programming because I think we could override our programming.
Oh yeah, we
I
can.
think we have consciousness, and I think like to
Oh
me
yeah.
like so.
But
I,
here's the thing, Marisa. What
uh
you said right now, let's take apart what you said.
Okay.
Did I this is where I wanna unpack what you said even more. Let's look at
Okay.
it this way. Okay, if you have if information
Mm-hmm.
and if people are you say I said programming, but that does not I said human beings are programmable.
Mm-hmm.
Did I say
But I also said right. So you
but
could
did I did
override the programming.
yeah, and that's a yes. People
Right.
and at no time did I ever
Mm-hmm.
say people can't override their programming. That
Okay.
was never an issue. No, That's absolutely, and that's the whole point of humanity, is that right now we're really at a crossroads. We're actually past midnight in terms of the witching, the doomsday arrow, the clock, the nuclear clock, is we're past the 12 o'clock, because in the sense that right now what you suggest is exactly what humanity needs to do. See what I mean? That
Right.
humanity needs to override its collective programming and mind control. But let's get into, why do we see so much of the time that this is not happening? If anything, it seems like it's more of a slide. Why do you think?
Well, I also think 5G has something to do with it.
Let's go to something that's not external.
Okay.
Ego, the calcified ego of humanity.
Right, because people don't want to admit they've been fooled or they're wrong.
Exactly. As Passio says, the three words that are the hardest for human beings to say, I
was wrong. Right.
And the thing is, I've realized I say that to myself daily. And the thing is, I think that that's a lesson for human beings in general. Like, and again, that's what I started with on this tear about the truth community, is that people think they have maybe 2% of knowledge and they think they know everything. And
well, you know what? I agree. And also, it just seems like they're their own kind of special brand of nuts,
yeah.
Yeah,
Well,
they are.
it's not only nuts, it's frankly stupidity.
I
Because
mean, yeah.
because look at it this way. There's a whole idea that, okay, that I have a friend who belongs to the very dear friend who's a member of the Israelite church, the Black Israelites. And he said, the reason, he's told me in many conversations, he said, the reason that my people are in the state that they are is because they're bullheaded. They think that they're so in their ego that they cannot see where they've been bamboozled or duped. And he said, but now I would apply that to humanity in general. That is why humanity is in the state that it is, because people, we can turn on any TV channel now through Thursday and we can see how people are mind controlled and duped, and it doesn't even we don't even need to talk about the players in this. It's bone
I don't
crushing.
even want to talk about the
Yeah.
players because I
But
don't
what
even
I'm saying,
care about the players.
right. It's totally bone crushingly obvious. It doesn't need to be said. Anybody with an IQ over 80 can see them. But the point is in bringing that up is to say that people, because their ego, because it's the idea, I'm smart, I'm right, nobody can fool me. Those are the statements that people play across their ticker tape in their mind on a constant basis from the time they wake up till the time they go to sleep. Besides the fact that the other reason that humanity is in the state that they are, is that the dark occultists have given humanity a watered down version of their own religion, their own spiritual practices. Because people are essentially, most people don't understand what true Satanism really is. It's the ego run amok, and it's selfish.
Right, it's service to self, and that's the other thing, Jim. It's like like you said, we are programmable. They give us a script, they tell us what to do, and then we go and do it. So,
right,
anyway,
and
so I guess the thing is to wrap this up, right?
Sure.
You know, I don't even know how to wrap this up because it's like, what's the solution? The solution is to stay connected to source and be aware of everything that's going on, question everything.
Okay. Yes. And I'd
Be
also put
practice discernment. And
yes, and I'd put another thing in there too. Oh, go
what
ahead. Go ahead. You were gonna say something.
No, I was just going to say that you can't really think that anybody's going to save you.
You gotta
Save,
save yourself,
you
man.
got to save yourself. Nobody's
Oh,
going to save you. Like rely on the higher consciousness, God, whatever it is, and you. I mean, in that's it for me, basically.
right. But there's one more thing.
What is it?
The most important thing. The thing we have to do our own shadow work. We have to sit in front of the mirror and
Hmm.
question. We have to break ourselves down every single day and our look at where the programming that we've
Hmm.
had in our lives from the time we were 0 to 7 and
Hmm.
how that programming escalated until we found out we'd been programmed. And past that up to this very moment, we have to sit and look at our own actions in the world towards other people and look at how that's been. How have we really held up to embodying natural law? Have we held up to these ideas? Have we held up to exercising discernment and using the trivium principle in our life on a daily basis? Are we practicing this? Not only that, what is it? Look at what we're feeling. It's essentially doing psychodrama on ourselves on a daily basis, to really pick apart ourselves, to be able to see where our failings have been so that we can wake up the next day or get up from that chair that we put the mirror in front of and do better when we stand up from that chair. That's the most important thing. How we react, are we active in the world or are we reacting to it? Are we active with people or are we reacting to them? Are
Okay, so basically, okay, you're talking about identifying patterns, correct? From
correct?
from our early childhood and how we keep repeating them and how
Yes,
like one thing can trigger us and we'll have the same reaction we've had ever since we were like 5 years old. And
exactly.
doing the shadow work is identifying those patterns, not getting triggered, and not repeating the same behavioral patterns.
It's very
Hmm.
also the thing
Hmm.
is it's looking at Jung really put this really well in his writings about how to go about doing this discernment. Also, Wilhelm Reich was
Hmm.
very good in this as well. He also wrote a great book called The Two Best Books That Reich's written. Every book that he's written was a masterpiece, but he wrote a book called The Mass Psychology of Fascism. And
Hmm.
he wrote a book called Listen, Little Man, that
Hmm.
essentially is a dialogue with the self that
Hmm.
basically talks about it's a book of shadow work.
Hmm.
And I mean, I would suggest to people start there, start with Jung and start on a start on doing the shadow work with yourself. Get a mirror, put it in, sit in a chair and ask yourself these questions ask yourself basic questions every day, you know?
Okay, well, I think that is a good point. Everything starts like again, which is where we started, back to you. Everything starts with yourself. We
It
have to
does.
save ourselves. We can't rely on anybody. We have to be smart about our environment, who's in it. We have to be smart about how we react to triggers and behavioral patterns, and basically we have to be vigilant about everything. So,
Exactly. Oh my gosh, Marisa, I just realized I forgot
yeah,
the most important thing.
which is
the biggest bane of humanity is the belief and adherence to authority. Because think about this, if everybody today just said, "Hey, Tedros, go fuck yourself," you know, hey,
we would not be in this mess.
right.
Just like David Icke says, this all ends when we say no.
There you go. That's exactly it. That's exactly it. But the belief in authority is the single biggest deterrent in humanity. That and the adherence to a calcified ego. Those are
Right.
those are the two biggest deterrents to humanity's ascent. I don't know if ascension is the right word, but to its evolution. There we go. To its evolution.
Okay, I agree with that. And I think that, again, it's like about being sovereign and not letting anybody or anything have dominion over you.
There you go. That's giving the middle finger to authority right there.
All right. So with that, Jim, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Maybe we could do another episode about shadow work or something else.
Sure, absolutely. Whatever and whenever you want. I'm always around.
Okay. Thanks again. And thanks everybody for tuning in.
Thanks.
Thank you so much. And we're going to stay tuned for more lives, and we're going to have Jim back on. And everybody have a beautiful day. And whatever you do, don't lose heart and stay human, humans. Okay. Thanks, Jim. See everybody later.